The Galactic Council chamber floated in the void between dimensions, a sphere of crystalline walls that reflected the light of 1,000 suns. Representatives from 63 species sat in their designated sections, their forms ranging from the beautiful to the incomprehensible. At the center, on the highest platform, stood the architects, ancient beings who had guided galactic civilization for 10 million years. Ambassador Chen Wei stood in the petitioner's circle, a small human woman dwarfed by the towering aliens around her. Her simple gray suit looked pitiful compared to the bioluminescent robes and energy mantles of the other species. Above her, the chief architect's form shifted like liquid mercury. Humanity requests membership in the Galactic Council, Chen said, her voice steady despite the weight of 1 trillion eyes watching through quantum feeds across the galaxy. A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. The Vrex delegate, a creature of shifting blue flames, spoke first. The humans? Yes. We have studied your species. You discovered faster-than-light travel only 40 cycles ago. You still wage war among yourselves. You consume animal flesh. You die after barely a century. Laughter echoed from multiple sections. Chen's jaw tightened, but she remained silent. The Calthrine representative, a being of pure crystalline thought, added its voice. Your technology is primitive. Your population is confined to one star system. Your unified government formed only 20 years ago after you nearly destroyed yourselves with atomic weapons. Why should we grant you a seat among civilized species? Chen had prepared for this. She had spent 5 years learning galactic politics, studying the complex web of alliances and rivalries that governed this vast civilization. She knew humanity was seen as barbaric, young, and foolish. We ask not for charity, Chen replied. We ask for the same opportunity you gave every other species in this chamber. The right to prove ourselves. The chief architect's voice resonated like thunder across dimensions. The galaxy is not kind to the weak human. There are powers here that could erase your entire species with a thought. The devourers wait at the galactic edge. The hive consciousness expands through the southern spiral arm. Ancient wars still burn in forgotten sectors. What can humanity offer that justifies the resources to protect you? Chen took a breath. This was the moment. We offer what we have always offered throughout our history. Adaptability. Resilience. Innovation born from necessity. We may be young but we learn quickly. We may be weak but we grow strong. We may be small but we think big. Silence filled the chamber for exactly 3 seconds. Then the Vrex delegate laughed, a sound like burning wind. Brave words from a species that still uses chemical rockets. Very well, human. We shall give you your chance. But first you must pass the trial of worth. Chen's heart sank. She had heard whispers of the trial but no details. No species had been subjected to it in over 1,000 years. The chief architect spoke again. The trial is simple. Somewhere in this galaxy we have placed a beacon. It transmits on frequencies your species can detect. If you find it within 10 standard cycles and return it to this chamber, humanity will be granted provisional membership. You will receive protection, trading rights, and access to our knowledge archives. And if we fail? Chen asked. Then humanity will be forbidden from leaving your star system for 1,000 cycles. You will remain isolated, unprotected, and alone. Should any threat come to your world, the Council will not intervene. Do you accept these terms? Chen thought of Earth. She thought of the dreams that had driven humanity to reach for the stars. She thought of the generations who had looked up at the night sky and wondered what waited among those distant lights. We accept. The chief architect's form pulsed with what might have been satisfaction. Then the trial begins now. May your species prove more capable than they appear. The chamber dissolved around Chen and she found herself back in her shuttle. Her hands shook as she initiated the quantum communicator. The message would take hours to reach Earth, but she had no choice. Humanity's future now depended on finding one object in a galaxy of 400 billion stars. And they had only 10 cycles, barely 5 Earth years, to succeed. As her shuttle accelerated toward the nearest jump gate, Chen stared out at the vast expanse of space. Somewhere in that infinite darkness waited the beacon that would determine humanity's fate. She smiled grimly. The galaxy had underestimated them before. It was about to learn a crucial lesson about humans. When humanity was given an impossible task, they didn't complain. They got to work. The emergency session of Earth's United Government convened within 6 hours of Chen's message. President Okafor stood before the assembly, his dark eyes scanning the faces of representatives from every nation. Behind him, a holographic display showed the vastness of the Milky Way galaxy. We have 5 years to find a needle in a cosmic haystack, Okafor said. The Council has given us an impossible task because they expect us to fail. They want us to remain isolated, to be forgotten. But I didn't fight for 30 years to unite this planet just to watch us become prisoners in our own star system. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, head of the Earth Space Agency, stepped forward. Her gray hair was tied back severely, her expression intense. We have advantages the Council doesn't know about. Our deep space network has been listening to the galaxy for decades. We have data, massive amounts of data that we haven't fully analyzed. If the beacon is transmitting, we've probably already heard it. We just need to find it in the noise. How long will that take? Asked Ambassador Chin, who had returned to Earth via emergency jump. With our current quantum computers? Decades, Mitchell admitted. But we don't have decades. We need a breakthrough. We need something that will multiply our computational power by orders of magnitude. In the back of the chamber, a young man stood. Dr. James Park was only 32, but he had already revolutionized 3 fields of physics. His colleagues called him brilliant. His critics called him reckless. Right now, humanity needed both. I have an idea, Park said. But it's dangerous. And it will require resources we've never committed to a single project before. Speak, Okafor commanded. Park's hands moved across his tablet, and the holographic display changed. It now showed a design, a ship unlike anything humanity had ever built. It was massive, stretching over 2 kilometers in length, its hull bristling with arrays and sensors. We call it Project Odyssey, Park explained. A ship designed not for war but for discovery. Its entire purpose is to process information. Quantum computing cores networked across the entire vessel, connected through entangled particles. Sensors that can detect gravitational ripples from halfway across the galaxy. An AI designed specifically for pattern recognition. An AI? Chin interrupted. The Council forbids artificial consciousness above certain thresholds. They made that clear in their technology restrictions. Park smiled coldly. The Council assumes we'll follow their rules. But we're not members yet. And they've already rigged the game against us. I say we play by our own rules. Murmurs spread through the chamber. What Park proposed wasn't just bold, it was potentially the kind of act that could make humanity enemies across the galaxy. There's more, Park continued. The ship itself will be built using new materials we've been developing. Hulls that can reshape themselves. Engines that tap into quantum foam. Weapons, yes, weapons, that the Council has never seen because we developed them independently. Weapons. Okafor leaned forward. The trial is about finding a beacon, not starting a war. Mr. President, the galaxy is not a safe place. Chen's reports make that clear. There are hostile forces out there. Pirates. Rogue AI collectives. Hive swarms. If we send a ship into deep space, it needs to be able to defend itself. More than that, it needs to be able to make the galaxy think twice about threatening us. Mitchell stepped beside Park, her expression troubled but determined. The design is theoretically sound. But building this ship would require converting half our orbital infrastructure. It would drain our deuterium reserves. It would demand every resource we have. Then we give it everything, Okafor said quietly. How long to build it? 18 months if we work around the clock. Another 6 months for testing. 2 years total. That leaves us 3 years to find the beacon. Okafor looked around the chamber. This is our moment. Future generations will judge us by what we do now. All in favor of Project Odyssey? The vote was unanimous. For the next 2 years, Earth became a single organism with one purpose. Shipyards in orbit around Earth, Mars, and the Moon worked constantly. The best minds from every nation contributed. Engineers who had been rivals became partners. Resources from corporations and governments flowed into the project without hesitation. And slowly the Odyssey took shape. It was beautiful and terrible at once. Its hull was composed of metamaterial that could reconfigure based on need. Armor against weapons, sensors for scanning, heat sinks for cooling. The quantum computing core at its heart was so powerful that it generated its own gravity field. The crew section could house 500 people in comfort, with food synthesizers and medical facilities that exceeded anything on Earth. But it was the weapons that made even the engineers nervous. Humanity had developed railguns that could accelerate projectiles to 1/10 of light speed. Particle beams that could cut through asteroids. And one weapon that Park refused to discuss, locked behind security protocols that only he could access. What did you put in my ship? Captain Maria Santos asked Park one day. She had been chosen to command the Odyssey, a veteran pilot with nerves of steel and a mind that could process combat scenarios faster than most computers. Insurance, Park replied. If we find the beacon and someone tries to take it from us, we'll need more than harsh language to protect it. Santos studied the classified schematics Park finally showed her. Her eyes widened. This is insane. If you fire this thing, it could... I know exactly what it could do, Park interrupted. That's why we built it. The council thinks we're primitive. They think we're weak. Let's hope they never give us a reason to prove them wrong. 24 months after the vote, the Odyssey prepared for its maiden voyage. Santos stood on the bridge, surrounded by the best crew humanity could assemble. Behind her, the quantum computing core hummed with barely contained power. The AI they had created, called Athena, waited to begin its search through decades of accumulated data. All stations report ready, the operations officer announced. Santos touched the communication panel. Earth Control, this is Odyssey. We are prepared to depart. President Okafor's voice came through clearly. Captain Santos, you carry humanity's hopes with you. Find the beacon. Show the galaxy what we're made of. Good luck and Godspeed. Understood, Mr. President. Odyssey out. Santos looked at her crew. She saw determination in every face. They were scientists, engineers, soldiers, and explorers. They were the best humanity had to offer. Take us out, she ordered. The Odyssey's engines ignited, tearing a hole in space-time itself. The massive ship leaped forward, accelerating beyond the speed of light in seconds. Behind them, Earth grew smaller. Ahead, the galaxy waited. 3 months into the voyage, Athena had processed 17 petabytes of radio telescope data. The quantum AI worked tirelessly, sifting through cosmic noise, filtering out pulsars, black holes, and the chatter of alien civilizations. The crew had settled into their routines, but tension never left the ship. Captain Santos stood in her ready room, staring at star charts that shifted and updated in real time. They were currently in the Perseus arm of the galaxy, investigating a region that had shown unusual energy signatures. The door chimed. Come, Santos called. Dr. Yuki Tanaka entered, the ship's chief science officer. His usually calm demeanor was cracked by visible excitement. Captain, Athena found something. You need to see this. Santos followed him to the science bay, where a dozen specialists hunched over holographic displays. Athena's avatar, a simple blue sphere, hovered at the center of the room. Show me, Santos ordered. The avatar pulsed. Athena's voice was neither male nor female, but somehow both. 72 days ago, Earth's Deep Space Network recorded a signal from coordinates in the Carina Sagittarius arm. The signal lasted exactly 3 seconds before ceasing. Analysis shows it contains patterns consistent with artificial origin. Probability that this is the beacon, 47%. That's not exactly confidence-inspiring, Santos muttered. Tanaka pulled up the signal's waveform. It's strange, Captain. The signal is there, but it's buried under layers of encryption or some kind of quantum noise. Like someone is trying to hide it. Athena needed to develop entirely new algorithms just to detect it. Why would the Council hide the beacon? I thought they wanted us to find it. Did they? Athena asked, a question that made everyone in the room pause. Analysis of the Council's historical patterns suggests a 68% probability that the trial is designed to be failed. No species in recorded history has been given such a task. The parameters are unusual. Santos felt a cold weight in her stomach. You're saying this is a setup. They never intended for US to succeed. Insufficient data to conclude definitively. However, the pattern is suggestive. Then we make them regret underestimating us, Santos said grimly. Plot a course for those coordinates. Best possible speed. And run every simulation we have on what might be waiting for us. The Odyssey changed course, its engines bending space-time around its hull. At maximum velocity, they could cross 10,000 light-years in weeks rather than millennia. But every jump strained the engines and required recalibration. 2 weeks later they emerged in the target system. It was a graveyard. Hundreds of derelict ships floated in orbit around a dead planet. Some were massive, dreadnoughts from species Santos recognized from Council records. Others were small, personal vessels. All showed signs of catastrophic damage. Life signs. Santos demanded. None, the sensor officer reported. Whatever happened here, it happened a long time ago. Some of these wrecks are over 1,000 years old. And the beacon? Athena processed for several seconds. Signal is originating from the planet's surface. Specifically, from within a structure at the northern pole. However, Captain, I am detecting another signal. This one is recent. Very recent. Define recent. Broadcast began 3 hours ago. It is a warning in 17 languages, including Human Standard English. Translating now, turn back. This place is death. The beacon is cursed. All who seek it perish. Turn back while you still can. The bridge fell silent. Santos's tactical officer, Commander James Reeves, spoke carefully. It could be the Council. A final test to see if we'll give up. Or it could be genuine, Tanaka countered. This system is a tomb. Whatever killed these ships might still be here. Santos studied the data. Every instinct she had developed over 20 years of military service screamed danger. But they had come too far to turn back now. Athena, can you determine what destroyed these ships? Negative. Damage patterns are inconsistent with known weapons. Energy signatures suggest reality manipulation on a scale that should be impossible. Recommendation, extreme caution. We didn't come out here to be cautious, Santos said. Prepare an away team. We're going to the surface. And bring the full armament. If something down there wants a fight, we'll give it one. An hour later, Santos led a team of 20 in powered armor down to the planet's surface. The world was frozen, its atmosphere long since stripped away by some ancient cataclysm. The structure Athena had identified rose from the ice like a black tooth, a pyramid of impossible angles that hurt to look at directly. That's not council architecture, Tanaka said, his voice crackling over the comm. That's older. Much older. They entered through a massive archway. Inside, the pyramid's interior defied physics. Corridors twisted in directions that shouldn't exist. Gravity shifted unpredictably. And everywhere, inscribed on the walls, were warnings in dead languages. Athena translated through Santos's helmet display, beyond lies the tool of gods. Beyond lies the end of civilizations. Beyond lies the price of hubris. Cheerful place, Reeves muttered. They descended deeper. The beacon's signal grew stronger with each level. And then they found it. The chamber was vast, easily a kilometer across. At its center, suspended in some kind of stasis field, floated an object the size of a human fist. It was perfectly black, absorbing all light that touched it. But it sang with power that made Santos's armor sensors scream warnings. That's it, Athena confirmed. The beacon. But Captain, I'm detecting something else. The stasis field is not council technology. It's a prison. Something is trapped in there with the beacon. What kind of something? Unknown. But power readings suggest it is still active despite being imprisoned for potentially millions of years. Santos approached slowly. As she did, the black object pulsed. And suddenly, a voice filled her mind, not through her helmet, but directly in her thoughts. Finally. After eons of waiting, something intelligent enough to free me. Little human, you have no idea what you've stumbled upon. This beacon you seek is a key. A key to power beyond your species' imagination. Free me and I will give you the galaxy. Leave me here and I will ensure your species is erased from existence once I inevitably escape. Choose quickly. Your companions cannot hear this conversation. Time flows differently here. Santos's blood ran cold. This was the real test. Not finding the beacon but what she chose to do with it. Who are you? She thought back. I am what your species will become, given enough time and enough hunger. I am what the council fears most. I am the reason they created this trial, to see if you are foolish enough to release me or wise enough to leave well enough alone. And if I take the beacon without freeing you, then you pass their test and doom your species to mediocrity under their rule. The council does not permit rivals, human. They will give you knowledge, yes, but never enough to threaten them. You will be pets. Useful but ultimately controlled. Santos considered. Every option led to danger. Free this entity and risk unleashing something terrible. Leave it and condemn humanity to subjugation. Take the beacon and make an enemy of whatever was imprisoned here. She made her decision. Athena, she said aloud. Can you map this stasis field structure? Yes, Captain. Why? Because we're not taking the beacon. We're taking everything. The beacon, the field, the entire chamber. We're going to rip it out of this pyramid and transport it to the ship. Clever, the voice purred in her mind. But futile. The field cannot be moved. Athena, probability of success? Calculating, 12%. Captain, this is extremely dangerous. If the field fails, then we die. But if we succeed, we control the situation. We can study it, understand it, and make our own choice about what to do with it on our terms, not anyone else's. It took them 6 hours of continuous work. They used the Odyssey's most powerful tractor beams. They carved through the pyramid's foundation with plasma cutters. They stabilized the stasis field with portable generators. And against all odds it worked. As the Odyssey jumped away from the dead system, its cargo bay now housed the greatest mystery humanity had ever encountered. They had the beacon. But they also had something the Council had tried to keep buried. Santos stood in the bay, staring at the suspended object and the presence she could feel lurking behind it. "You're contained for now," she said aloud. "And you're going to stay that way until we understand exactly what you are." "We shall see, Captain. We shall see." The Odyssey traveled for 2 months before Captain Santos felt secure enough to begin proper analysis of their prize. The stasis chamber remained in the cargo bay, surrounded by every sensor and containment field the crew could devise. Dr. Tanaka led a team working around the clock to understand what they had found. Meanwhile, Athena had made a disturbing discovery. Santos sat in her ready room when the AI's avatar materialized. "Captain, I have completed analysis of the data we recovered from the pyramid systems. You need to hear this immediately." "Go ahead." The pyramid was built approximately 4.7 million years ago by a species called the progenitors. According to fragmentary records, they were the first spacefaring civilization in this galaxy. They created the stasis field to imprison what they called a devourer, an entity that consumed entire star systems. "The thing talking in my head is a devourer?" "Affirmative. But Captain, there's more. The beacon itself was not placed there by the Galactic Council. It was placed there by the progenitors as a warning beacon, designed to keep other species away from the prison. The Council discovered it approximately 3,000 years ago. They studied it extensively." Santos felt her pulse quicken. "Then the trial was designed to test whether humanity would be tempted by forbidden power or would demonstrate wisdom by avoiding it. However, by taking both the beacon and the prison, you have done something unprecedented. You have introduced a variable the Council did not anticipate. Will they see that as passing the test or failing it?" "Insufficient data. But Captain, there is another complication. I have detected subtle quantum communications emanating from the stasis field. The devourer is transmitting its location to something. I believe it is calling for others of its kind." Santos was on her feet instantly. "Can we block the signal?" "I am attempting to do so, but the technology is far beyond current understanding. We have perhaps 3 weeks before the signal reaches its intended recipients. Recommendation: we must return to Council space immediately and turn this over to them." "No." The word came out harder than Santos intended. "We give this to the Council and we lose all bargaining power. They'll take it, study it in secret, and leave us with nothing but their table scraps. We need to understand what we have first. Then we negotiate from a position of strength." "Captain, that is extraordinarily risky." "Risk is what humans do best." Santos activated her comm. "Dr. Park, report to my ready room immediately." James Park arrived within minutes, looking exhausted. He had been working non-stop on analyzing the metamaterial that comprised the pyramid structure. When Santos explained the situation, his tired eyes sharpened with intensity. "If the devourer is calling for help, we need to be ready for a fight," he said. "Captain, remember that classified weapon system I installed? The one you won't explain." "I can't explain it because the physics shouldn't work. But I think it's time to tell you what it does. We call it the Casimir cannon. It exploits quantum fluctuations in the vacuum of space to create localized tears in spacetime. Essentially, it briefly opens a hole into the quantum foam underlying reality." Santos stared at him. "That sounds like the weapon description in the pyramid. The thing that destroyed all those ships." "Exactly. The progenitors developed it. I found fragments of their research in a damaged probe we recovered from the outer solar system 10 years ago. I've been working on reconstructing it ever since. The military brass thought I was crazy, so I kept it as a black project." "You put an experimental superweapon on my ship without authorization?" "I put the only weapon that might be able to kill something that eats stars on your ship without authorization," Park corrected. "You're welcome." Before Santos could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. The bridge officer's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, to the bridge. We have incoming ships." Santos and Park sprinted to the bridge. The main view screen showed 3 vessels decelerating from faster-than-light speeds. They were massive, each one dwarfing the Odyssey, and their design was elegant and deadly. Santos recognized the configuration from Council databases. "Architects," she breathed. "Those are architect warships." The communication panel lit up. A figure appeared, humanoid but composed of flowing mercury-like substance. When it spoke, the voice resonated with harmonics that suggested vast power barely contained. Captain Santos of Earth. This is Architect Sovereign Zareth. You have taken something that does not belong to you. You will surrender it immediately. Santos straightened her uniform. Sovereign Zareth. We retrieved the beacon as required by the trial. We are returning to present it to the council as agreed. You know that is not the only thing you took. Censors do not lie, human. You have stolen a progenitor prison. You have placed this entire sector at risk. Surrender it now or we will take it by force. The trial had no stipulations about how we could retrieve the beacon or what else we could take, Santos replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. We broke no laws. You break the highest law, the law of safety for all species. That prison contains one of the most dangerous entities in galactic history. It must be contained in proper facilities under architect supervision. Then I suggest you escort us to those facilities, Santos said. We're happy to cooperate, under the condition that humanity receives full credit for this discovery and appropriate compensation. Zareth's form rippled with what might have been anger. You dare bargain with the lives of trillions? Your arrogance is astounding. It's not arrogance. It's negotiation. You tried to trick us with an impossible test. We succeeded anyway. Now you're threatening us because we were too successful. That tells me you never wanted us to pass. You wanted us to fail so you could justify keeping us isolated. Silence hung between them for 3 long seconds. You are more perceptive than expected, Zareth finally said. Very well. We will escort you to the nearest architect facility. But know this, Captain, your actions here will have consequences far beyond what your limited perspective can comprehend. The communication ended. The 3 architect ships moved into formation around the Odyssey. They're tracking us with targeting systems, Reeves reported quietly. If we make any aggressive moves, they'll destroy us. Santos nodded slowly. She had bought them time, but they were now prisoners in all but name. In the cargo bay, the Devourer's voice whispered into her mind, Well played, little human. But the architects will never let you leave that facility alive. They cannot afford for your species to learn their secrets. I offer again, free me and I will destroy them. You and I could reshape this galaxy together. Santos ignored the voice. But she couldn't ignore the truth in its words. The architects were afraid of what humanity might become. And fear made even the most advanced species dangerous. Dr. Park, she said quietly, how quickly can we charge the Casimir cannon? 6 hours for a full charge. But Captain, if we use it against architect ships, we'll start a war. I know. But I'd rather start a war than become slaves. Threshold Station hung in the void between galaxies, a massive structure built by the architects before most current civilizations had even developed tools. It was a fortress, a research facility, and a prison all in one. As the Odyssey approached under escort, Santos could see hundreds of ships docked at its sprawling arms, vessels from dozens of species, all under architect control. Impressive, Tanaka murmured. The energy readings are off the scale. They're tapping directly into the cosmic microwave background for power. They're about to need every bit of that power, Santos replied quietly. The Odyssey docked at a designated port. Immediately, architect security forces swarmed the ship. They were not the Mercury beings like Zareth, but enforcer constructs, mechanical entities with gleaming armor and weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. An architect coordinator materialized on the bridge. Captain Santos, you and your command staff will accompany us to the detention level while we extract the progenitor prison. Your crew will remain aboard, confined to quarters. That wasn't our agreement, Santos said. Your agreement is now void. Sovereign Zareth has determined that your species poses a security risk. Once the prison is secured, you will be transported to the Council homeworld for judgment. If you cooperate, your crew may eventually be returned to Earth. If you resist, your ship will be destroyed. Santos glanced at Reeves. He gave the slightest nod. They had prepared for this. Very well, Santos said, raising her hands. We'll cooperate. The architect coordinator seemed surprised by the easy compliance. It should have been suspicious. But the architects had ruled the galaxy for so long that they had forgotten how dangerous cornered prey could be. As Santos and her command staff were let off the ship, Athena activated a subroutine that Park had coded into her systems. It was elegant, subtle, and completely hidden from external sensors. The AI began taking control of Threshold Station systems, one node at a time. Meanwhile, in the cargo bay, a different drama unfolded. The architect extraction team surrounded the stasis field with specialized equipment. Their leader, a being named Corvex, studied the readings with growing alarm. This is wrong. The field's integrity has degraded significantly. How did you transport this without? The stasis field pulsed. Korvac spun toward his team. Evacuate. Now. The field is collapsing. But it was too late. The Devourer had been patient for millions of years. It had whispered to Santos, tested her, tried to manipulate her. But it had also been working on the field from the inside, wearing it down one quantum fluctuation at a time. The journey on the Odyssey had provided the final stress the field couldn't withstand. The stasis field shattered. For a moment nothing happened. Then reality itself seemed to scream. The Devourer unfolded into three-dimensional space. It was vast, incomprehensible, a thing of shadows and teeth and hunger given form. It had been imprisoned for so long that it had nearly been driven mad, and that madness made it even more dangerous. It consumed the architect extraction team in seconds, adding their energy to its own. Then it began to grow. Alarms shrieked throughout Threshold Station. Santos, locked in a detention cell with her officers, felt the station shudder. Right on schedule, she said quietly. Reeves looked at her with shock. You knew this would happen. You planned for the field to fail. We couldn't fight the architects directly. We're too weak. But we could introduce chaos. The Devourer is that chaos. And while everyone is distracted trying to contain it. Santos tapped her neural implant. Athena, execute Protocol Phoenix. Throughout the station, systems suddenly turned against their masters. Doors locked, trapping architect forces in sections that were then vented to space. Weapons platforms recalibrated their targeting and began firing on architect ships. The station's power core began overloading in a carefully controlled cascade. And in the docking bay, the Odyssey's engines roared to life. The ship tore free from its moorings, its metamaterial hull rippling and reconfiguring into combat mode. Weapons that had been hidden in innocent-looking sensor arrays deployed. The Casimir cannon began to charge, drawing power from the ship's quantum core. Captain Santos and her crew materialized on the Odyssey's bridge via emergency transporter. Another bit of human technology the architects hadn't known about because humans had developed it independently. Status? Santos barked, sliding into her command chair. The Devourer is loose and feeding, Athena reported. It has consumed 17 architect ships and is growing exponentially. Architect forces are responding with quantum bombs. Station integrity is at 40% and falling. 3 architect dreadnoughts are breaking formation to engage us. Shields to maximum. Charge all weapons. And send a message on all frequencies. Any ship that wants to live should run. Now. Across the station, dozens of species heard the message. They saw the chaos unfolding, saw the architect's perfect order collapsing into destruction. And they made their choice. Ships from 20 different civilizations broke free from the docking clamps and fled into open space. The architects were too busy fighting the Devourer to stop them all. But 3 dreadnoughts turned their full attention to the Odyssey. Incoming fire. Reeves shouted. The first salvo hit the Odyssey's shields like a hammer blow. Energy washed over the hull, so intense that the viewscreen had to polarize to avoid blinding the crew. The ship shuddered but held. Return fire. Santos ordered. The Odyssey's railguns spat projectiles at a tenth of light speed. They struck the lead dreadnought's shields and punched through, tearing massive gouges in the alien ship's hull. But the dreadnought kept coming, along with its companions. Shields at 60%, Reeves reported. Captain, we can't take much more of this. Santos watched the tactical display. The Casimir cannon was at 90% charge. Just a little longer. Athena, target solution on the center dreadnought. Prepare to fire the cannon on my mark. Captain, if we fire that weapon we may damage the space-time fabric in this entire region. The consequences are unpredictable. So is losing. Fire. The Odyssey seemed to gather itself, every system focusing on the massive weapon array at its bow. Space itself rippled, and for a brief moment, every sensor in the system registered something impossible, a hole in reality. The beam that emerged was not light or energy in any conventional sense. It was the absence of existence itself, a concentrated stream of quantum nothingness that unmade anything it touched. The center dreadnought didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a massive vessel with thousands of crew. The next moment, there was only empty space and confused sensor readings. The other 2 dreadnoughts stopped firing. Across all channels, silence reigned. Then Sovereign Zaratha's voice cut through the chaos. Impossible. That weapon, that technology is forbidden. It nearly destroyed the galaxy once before. How did you? We're human, Santos interrupted. We don't wait for permission to innovate. We don't accept limits imposed by others. And we don't surrender. She paused, letting her words sink in. Now, Sovereign. You have two choices. Call off your remaining ships and let us leave, or discover what happens when we fire this weapon at your precious station. Behind them, the Devourer continued its rampage, consuming Architect ships with terrible efficiency. The station was breaking apart, massive sections spinning off into the void. Thousands were dying and the Architects were losing control. You would doom this entire sector? Zaratha's voice held something humans had never heard from an Architect before: fear. I would doom the entire galaxy before I let my species become your pets, Santos replied coldly. You tried to trap us. You rigged your test. You planned to imprison us regardless of our success. Did you really think we wouldn't figure it out? Did you really think we'd just accept it? You are one ship against the might of galactic civilization. One ship that just erased your dreadnought from existence. One ship with weapons you can't defend against. One ship crewed by a species that would rather burn the galaxy down than kneel. Santos leaned forward. How many more ships do you want to lose today, Sovereign? Because I promise you, we will take as many of you with us as we can. The communication went silent for exactly 7 seconds. When Zarath spoke again, his voice carried a weight of terrible realization. You are not negotiating for your freedom. You are declaring war on the established order. No, Santos said quietly. We're declaring that humanity will never again be underestimated. Let us go, Sovereign. Before more die. The 2 remaining dreadnoughts slowly backed away. The Odyssey, battered but unbroken, began moving toward open space. Behind them, Threshold Station continued its death spiral, and the Devourer fed on the chaos. As they reached the edge of the system, Athena spoke. Captain, the Devourer is attempting communication. It wishes to thank us. Tell it we didn't do this for it, Santos replied. And tell it that if it ever threatens Earth or our allies, we'll find a way to kill it too. The Odyssey jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving destruction in its wake. The Odyssey limped through hyperspace, its metamaterial hull slowly repairing itself while the crew worked around the clock on damaged systems. They had won the battle at Threshold Station, but Santos knew the war was just beginning. 3 days after their escape, Athena detected 15 Architect warships on an intercept course. The Council had responded, and this time they were sending overwhelming force. They mean to destroy us, Reeves said, studying the tactical projections. No warnings, no communication. Just termination. Santos called an emergency meeting of her senior staff. Dr. Park arrived with dark circles under his eyes. Dr. Tanaka looked grim. Even Athena's avatar seemed dimmer than usual. We can't outrun them, Santos began. And we can't fight 15 dreadnoughts, even with the Casimir cannon. That weapon takes 6 hours to recharge and we only get 1 shot before they overwhelm us. We could try to reach Council space, Tanaka suggested. Appeal directly to the full Council rather than just the Architects. Some species might. Some species might what? Park interrupted bitterly. Support us against the Architects? The same Architects who have ruled for 10 million years? We're alone out here. Santos shook her head slowly. No, we're not alone. Athena, show them what we found in the Threshold Station databanks before we left. The holographic display shifted, showing streams of intercepted data. Athena's voice carried a note of something almost like excitement. During our infiltration of Threshold Station systems, I discovered suppressed historical records. The Architects have not been honest about galactic history. Approximately 1 million years ago, there was another species that challenged Architect supremacy. They were called the Vex Collective. They developed technology that rivaled the Architects, including weapons similar to our Casimir cannon. What happened to them? Reeves asked. The Architects destroyed them. Completely. Wiped their civilization from existence and erased most records of their culture. But before they fell, the Vex Collective sent out seed ships, automated vessels containing their technology and knowledge hidden in remote systems. The Architects have been searching for these seed ships for 1 million years. Santos smiled grimly. And Athena found one of them. Or rather, found the location. Park's eyes widened. You want to find this seed ship? Captain, we have maybe 4 days before the Architects catch us. We don't have time for an archaeological expedition. We have time if the seed ship contains what I think it contains, Santos replied. Athena, explain your theory. Analysis of Vex Collective records suggests they developed something they called a dimensional anchor. A device that could stabilize and weaponize the quantum foam effects that the Casimir cannon creates. With such a device, the Casimir cannon's recharge time would be reduced from 6 hours to 6 minutes. Additionally, the weapon's power would increase by a factor of 10. Silence filled the room. That would make us more dangerous than an entire architect fleet, Tanaka whispered. It would make us a god killer, Park said, using the term he had heard whispered in the Threshold Station's database. The Vex Collective called their most powerful ships god killers because they could destroy anything, even the architect's most ancient and powerful vessels. Santos looked at each of them in turn. I'm not asking you to vote. I'm telling you what we're going to do. We're going to find this dimensional anchor. We're going to integrate it into the Odyssey. And then we're going to show the architects exactly what happens when you try to chain humanity. The coordinates led them to a dying red giant in an unnamed system. Orbiting close to the star was a massive structure. A Vex seed ship, still functional after 1,000,000 years. It was beautiful and terrible, covered in equations written in light that described reality manipulating mathematics. The architects must have searched for this, Tanaka breathed. How did they miss it? Because they were looking for Vex technology signatures, Athena explained. But the seed ship's camouflage was designed to mimic natural stellar phenomena. Only by analyzing architect search patterns could I deduce where they had not looked. They docked with the seed ship. Inside they found wonders, technology preserved in quantum stasis, knowledge stored in crystalline matrices, and at the heart of it all, the dimensional anchor. It was smaller than Santos expected, barely the size of a basketball. But the power readings were astronomical. How long to integrate this into our systems? Santos asked Park. If we work non-stop? 36 hours. Maybe less if Athena helps coordinate. Then we work non-stop. Athena, what's our timeline on the architect fleet? They will reach this system in 42 hours, Captain. That gives us 6 hours of buffer. Not much but enough. Let's move. The next 36 hours were a blur of frenetic activity. Park and his engineering team worked miracles, integrating alien technology millions of years old into human-built systems. Athena translated Vex mathematical frameworks into code the Odyssey's computers could process. The crew pushed past exhaustion, fueled by the knowledge that failure meant extinction. With 3 hours to spare, Park activated the integrated system. The Odyssey transformed. The metamaterial hull reconfigured itself, incorporating Vex geometric patterns that bent light and space around the ship. The Casimir cannon's barrel extended, reinforced by dimensional anchors that stabilized its reality-tearing effects. Energy readings spiked so high that several systems had to be recalibrated just to measure them. We're reading power levels that shouldn't be possible, Tanaka reported, his voice filled with awe. Captain, this ship is now generating enough energy to sustain a small civilization. If we fire the Casimir cannon at full power, we could crack a planet, Park finished, or erase a star from existence. Captain, we've built something that terrifies me. This ship is exactly what the Vex Collective called it, a god killer. Santos stood on the bridge, looking at the transformed vessel around her. She felt the power humming through every bulkhead, saw the way space itself seemed to bend around them. Then let's hope, she said quietly, that the gods learn to fear us. The architect fleet emerged from hyperspace exactly on schedule. 15 dreadnoughts, each one carrying enough firepower to sterilize a world. Their commander broadcast on all frequencies. Human Vessel Odyssey. This is Architect Supreme Commander Vexus. You have been sentenced to termination for crimes against galactic order. You will not be given the opportunity to surrender. Your execution begins now. All 15 dreadnoughts fired simultaneously. The barrage was apocalyptic: quantum torpedoes, reality-warping beams, gravitational weapons that could collapse spacetime itself. Any normal ship would have been annihilated instantly. The Odyssey's shields held. More than held, they absorbed the incoming energy and fed it into the ship's power systems. The dimensional anchors surrounding the hull created barriers that existed in multiple dimensions, simultaneously, making the ship nearly impossible to hit in any conventional sense. Their expressions must be priceless, Reeves muttered, watching the sensor readings. Return fire, Santos ordered. Show them what a god killer can do. The Casimir cannon fired. This time the effect was even more dramatic. The beam didn't just erase matter, it unmade the fundamental forces holding reality together. 3 dreadnoughts simply vanished, along with a sphere of space 3 kilometers in diameter. The remaining ships frantically scattered. Recharging, Park announced. Time to next shot, 6 minutes. 6 minutes. They had transformed the Odyssey's greatest weapon from a one-shot desperation move into something that could be fired repeatedly in combat. The architect's numerical advantage meant nothing against a weapon that could delete them from existence. All ships, Santos broadcast. This is your only warning. Stand down or share the fate of your companions. We did not start this war, but we will finish it. Supreme Commander Vexus responded, his voice shaking with emotion that might have been rage or fear. You think 12 remaining ships cannot destroy you? You arrogant primitives. You have unleashed forbidden technology. You have violated every law of civilized species. You will be hunted to the last human. Your world will be burned. The communication cut off as the Odyssey fired again. 2 more dreadnoughts ceased to exist. Any other volunteers? Santos asked the remaining 10 ships. One by one, the architect dreadnoughts powered down their weapons and began to retreat. They had been sent to execute a sentence, but they had encountered something they thought impossible. A single ship that could defeat them all. As the last architect vessel jumped to hyperspace, Santos turned to her crew. They looked exhausted, shocked, and proud all at once. Athena, Santos said. Send a message to the Galactic Council. All frequencies, all languages, maximum priority. Ready, Captain. Santos took a deep breath. This next message would change everything. To the Galactic Council and all species who receive this transmission, this is Captain Maria Santos of the Earth Starship Odyssey. We completed your trial. We found your beacon. But more importantly, we found your lies. You tested us not to see if we were worthy, but to see if we were dangerous. You discovered that we are both. You tried to imprison us. You sent your fleets to destroy us. And you failed. Humanity claims its place among the stars not by your permission, but by right of strength. We have built a ship you call a god-killer, and that name is accurate. We possess technology that terrifies even the architects. And we will use it to defend ourselves and any species that seeks our protection. We offer you a choice. Recognize humanity as an equal member of the galactic community, with all rights and privileges, or recognize us as your enemy. But make no mistake, the age of architect supremacy is over. A new power has risen. And we will not be ignored. Santos paused, then added one final line. We are humanity. And we are done asking permission to exist. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, trillions of beings heard the message. Some reacted with fear. Some with excitement. Some with hope. But all of them understood that the galaxy had changed forever. The Galactic Council reconvened in emergency session 6 days after Santos's transmission. The chamber was more crowded than it had been in centuries. Species that had not attended in generations sent representatives. The air crackled with tension and possibility. Ambassador Chen Wei stood once again in the petitioner's circle, but this time she was not alone. Captain Santos stood beside her, still in her uniform, bearing the scars of battle. Behind them, projected in holographic form, was the Odyssey itself, the god-killer that had shattered architect invincibility. The chief architect spoke first, its mercury form roiling with barely contained emotion. What you have done is an act of war. You have destroyed architect vessels. You have released a devourer, thankfully now recontained at great cost. You have stolen ancient technology. You have threatened the peace that has existed for millions of years. Santos met its gaze without flinching. You sent fleets to execute us without trial. You rigged your test to ensure our failure. You have suppressed other species' development to maintain your supremacy. Who really threatened the peace, architect? A murmur ran through the chamber. Several species that had long chafed under architect rule watched with fascination. The Vrex delegate, the one who had initially mocked humanity, spoke. The human makes a point. The architects have held power for so long that they have forgotten they too were once young and hungry. Perhaps it is time for change. Change? The chief architect's voice thundered. You speak of change? This species has possessed faster-than-light travel for barely 40 cycles. They are infants playing with weapons that could destroy galaxies. Then perhaps, said the Calthrine representative, its crystalline form glowing with thought patterns, they are infants we should teach rather than suppress. The architects hoarded knowledge to maintain control. What if we shared it instead? The debate raged for hours. Species that had been silent for millennia found their voices. The rigid hierarchy of the council began to crack. And through it all, Santos and Chin stood silently, letting the aliens argue among themselves. Finally, the chief architect raised a hand and silence fell. Very well. The council will vote. All species, including humanity, will have a voice. The question before us, Should humanity be granted full membership status despite their unprecedented actions? The vote began. Species after species announced their position. Some voted no, citing human violence and unpredictability. But more voted yes, some because they admired human courage, others because they feared human weapons, and still others because they saw an opportunity to weaken architect control. When the final tally was announced, humanity had won. Barely. But it was enough. The Council recognizes Earth and its territories as a sovereign member of galactic civilization, the chief architect announced, its voice heavy with resignation. Humanity will receive full rights, including access to our knowledge archives, protection under Council law, and a permanent seat in this chamber. Chin bowed formally. On behalf of humanity, we accept with gratitude and humility. However, the chief architect continued, there is the matter of the God Killer. The Odyssey possesses weapons that violate galactic law. We demand that these weapons be surrendered or destroyed. Santos smiled coldly. No. The chamber erupted into chaos. The chief architect's form blazed with energy. You refuse? I refuse to disarm while potential threats exist, Santos replied calmly. You may call the Odyssey a God Killer, but we call it insurance. The Devourer still lives somewhere in this galaxy. Hostile forces exist at the galactic rim. And perhaps most importantly, we have learned that even the Council cannot be fully trusted. This is unacceptable. Then it's unacceptable, Santos shot back. You gave us a choice, Architect. Join you as equals or be recognized as enemies. We chose equality. And equals do not disarm at the command of those who try to destroy them. The Vrex delegate spoke up. A compromise perhaps. The humans keep their ship but agree to restrictions on its use. It can only be deployed in defense or with Council approval. Santos considered this. It was reasonable, which made it dangerous. Restrictions had a way of becoming chains. But she also recognized that absolute defiance would make too many enemies. Agreed, she said. With one addition. If the Council ever again attempts to suppress, control, or eliminate humanity, all restrictions are void. We will defend ourselves with everything we have. That is acceptable, the Vrex delegate said before the architects could object. Several other species voiced agreement. The architects, recognizing they had lost control of the narrative, reluctantly acquiesced. The formal ceremonies took another week. Humanity was officially welcomed into galactic society. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges were planned. The human embassy on the Council station was established. A gleaming structure that incorporated both human architecture and alien materials. But the real changes happened quietly. Species that had been suppressed under architect rule began to innovate again. New technologies emerged. Old alliances shifted. The rigid order that had existed for millions of years began to evolve into something more dynamic and unpredictable. And at the center of it all was humanity, the young species that had refused to know its place. 3 months after the vote, Santos stood in the Odyssey's observation deck, staring out at a nebula that painted space in shades of purple and gold. Dr. Park joined her, carrying 2 glasses of whiskey smuggled from Earth. To the God Killer, he said, raising his glass. To humanity, Santos corrected, clinking her glass against his. They drank in comfortable silence. Do you think we did the right thing? Park asked eventually. We could have destroyed them all. The Odyssey is powerful enough. We could have taken control of the Council by force. Santos shook her head. That's what the architects would do. What the Devourer wanted us to do. But we're better than that. We proved we could fight, but we chose to negotiate. We showed strength, but we also showed wisdom. That's what makes us human. Some will say we're still barbarians playing at civilization. Let them say it. We'll prove them wrong, one innovation at a time. One alliance at a time. One generation at a time. Santos smiled. Our children will grow up in a galaxy that knows Earth. Our grandchildren will grow up in a galaxy shaped by human ideas. That's worth more than any conquest. Park nodded slowly. What about the Devourer? It's still out there. If it threatens us, we'll deal with it. That's what the Odyssey is for, not conquest but protection. Not domination but defense. Santos turned from the window. Come on. We have a new mission from the Council. There's a plague affecting 3 species in the outer reaches. They requested human medical assistance. From barbarians to healers in 3 months, Park chuckled. We're moving up in the galaxy. We're showing them who we really are, Santos corrected. Adaptable. Resilient. Capable of both terrible violence and profound compassion. That's the human condition. The Odyssey's engines hummed to life, ready to jump to the next crisis, the next challenge, the next opportunity to prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. Back on Earth, millions watched the news feeds showing humanity's expanding influence. Children looked up at the night sky and dreamed of joining the crews that explored the galaxy. Scientists worked on new innovations inspired by alien technology but distinctly human in application. Leaders debated how to manage relationships with dozens of species, each with their own needs and cultures. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human potential had begun. Ambassador Chin stood in the council chamber, now officially recognized as Earth's permanent representative. Around her, delegates from across the galaxy gathered for the daily session. Some still looked at her with suspicion. Others with respect. A few with friendship. She had a proposal to present today, a human idea for a new technology-sharing initiative that would benefit young species across the galaxy. It would shift power away from the architects and toward a more distributed model. It would be controversial. But Chen had learned something important from Captain Santos and the Odyssey. Humans didn't wait for permission to change the galaxy. They just did it. As the session began, Chen smiled. The architects had thought they were testing humanity to see if they were worthy of joining galactic civilization. They had been wrong. Humanity hadn't been tested to join civilization. They had been tested to transform it. And they had passed with flying colors. The galaxy would never be the same. Epilogue, 50 years later. The memorial stood in Geneva, on the spot where the United Government had first voted to fund Project Odyssey. It was a simple monument, a piece of the original Odyssey's hull, preserved in stasis with a plaque that read, "To those who dared to reach for the stars and refused to be told they couldn't touch them." President Chin, daughter of Ambassador Chin Wei, stood before it with Captain Santos, now retired but still called upon for advice. They were both older, gray-haired, carrying the weight of decades spent shaping humanity's place in the galaxy. "Your mother would be proud," Santos said quietly. "She always believed we belonged out there," President Chin replied. "She just didn't know we'd end up leading the reform movement." In 50 years the galaxy had transformed. The architect monopoly on advanced technology had broken. 15 new species had achieved faster-than-light travel with human assistance. The rigid council hierarchy had evolved into something more democratic and dynamic. Wars that had raged for centuries had been resolved through human mediation. And at the center of it all, humanity had become known not as conquerors or warriors, but as innovators and bridge builders. The Godkiller Odyssey still existed, now commanded by Santos's protégé, but it spent more time on scientific missions than military ones. "Do you ever regret it?" President Chin asked. "How we did things? The violence? The threats?" Santos was quiet for a long moment. "I regret every death. Every ship we destroyed held people with families and dreams. But I don't regret saving humanity from subjugation. Sometimes the only way to earn respect is to show that you refuse to be disrespected. The galaxy learned that lesson from us. And now we show them what happens when humanity is given the chance to thrive instead of just survive. We've built hospitals on 40 worlds. We've terraformed 3 planets. We've taught 100 species new technologies. That's our legacy, not the weapons." They stood in silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that reminded Santos of that nebula 50 years ago. "Captain Santos," President Chin finally said, "the Council has asked for you specifically. There's a situation on the galactic rim. A new species has been discovered. They're aggressive, powerful, and they refuse to communicate. The architects want to quarantine them. Some species want to attack them preemptively. And what does the Council want from me? They want to send the Odyssey. They want you to do what you did 50 years ago, make first contact with a dangerous species and somehow turn them into allies instead of enemies. They say if anyone can understand dangerous potential, it's humanity." Santos smiled. "Tell them I'll do it. But on one condition." "What's that?" "We send a message first. We tell this new species the truth, that the galaxy will underestimate them, test them, and try to control them. But if they're strong enough and clever enough, they can claim their own place among the stars. Just like we did." President Chin laughed. "That's going to terrify the architects." "Good. The architects have been too comfortable for too long. Time to remind them that the galaxy belongs to the bold, not the ancient." As they walked away from the memorial, Santos looked up at the early stars appearing in the evening sky. Somewhere up there, the Odyssey waited to carry humanity's message to yet another species yearning for freedom. The message was simple: you are not alone. You are not weak. And you are not less than anyone in this galaxy. You just have to prove it. Humanity had proven it 50 years ago with fire and courage. Now they would prove it again with wisdom and compassion. Because that was what made humanity special. Not their weapons or their ships or their technology. It was their refusal to be defined by anyone else's expectations. It was their ability to be both warriors and healers, destroyers and builders, feared and beloved. It was their humanity. And the galaxy was better for it.